Professor Chris Baker is Director of the William Temple Foundation. Professor Baker, thank you very much. The William Temple Foundation, would you briefly explain who William Temple was and why his view of the role of the clerics in society is so relevant to what we're hearing from Justin Welby today?
Thank you, and good afternoon and happy Easter to you.
Thank you too.
Well, William Temple was Archbishop of Canterbury in the 1940s. He's Justin Welby's predecessor. And he saw his main role as the Archbishop of Canterbury to help lead the debate about the sort of society that we should build after the Second World War. And he said that the social rebuilding and the moral and the physical rebuilding should all reflect a basic premise of Christian theology. That is to say that every person is made in the image of God and therefore deserves to live in a society, a social order, as he called it, which respects that intrinsic dignity and uniqueness. And his argument for the church to, as he said, interfere in these kind of very broad policy terms was because it was the duty of the church to shape society and the way society thinks in accordance with the principles of God. So out of his thinking about how do we rebuild Britain after the Second World War, he came up with the idea of the welfare state as this expression of God's unconditional love for every human being. And he worked closely with William Beveridge, who of course then supplied the policy details that led to the formation of the welfare state. William Temple sadly died in 1944, so never saw his ideas come to fruition, but his thinking is still highly influential.
Now, in terms of what Justin Welby is saying then, the argument from the church's side will be, look, this is a legitimate role for the organised religion, the recognised establishment religion, to make when politics is doing something that appears to undermine those Christian principles. How, though, do you and those who take that view respond to those that say, well, hang on a minute, governments are elected by people to do things and make choices. Those choices are spelt out and their policy is ultimately determined by voters. They re-elect you or they get rid of you. The church's role is not in that sphere.
Well, as your report has said, I think what Justin Welby is pointing out isn't so much the policy, specific policy issues around this. He's reminding British society, British establishment of core principles which are around the Christian values of hospitality, providing refuge, support, working for the well-being and development of all humankind. And as you say, as leader of the established church, he traditionally uses his Easter sermon to address issues that are of national and international concern. So I don't think he's doing anything that's particularly out of the ordinary. But he's certainly making it very clear that as far as he's concerned, this particular policy towards refugees is not in accordance with what he would interpret, I think many Christians would interpret, as a kind of God's will for the kind of society that we want to live in.
One last brief point, though, the difference with let's say him or say a senior imam or even as an archbishop, a cardinal in the Catholic Church, is they don't necessarily have a seat and a vote in Parliament that allows them to express and vote on. That's where the line is crossed, isn't it? If he then votes against the policy, then that is active, isn't it? Isn't that different from commenting on it?
Well, of course, I mean, the Church of England bishops sit in the House of Lords. They do have a constitutional role, which is to advise on government policy, and Archbishop Welby is often there with other bishops, particularly advising and commenting on policy that deals particularly with issues around poverty, inclusion, and well-being. So again, it's part of the constitution. He has a constitutional position that no other faith leader has in England. That's true.
Professor Chris Baker at the William Temple Foundation, thank you very much.
Thank you.